นะครับ
Hi all.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Good
Good
evening.
evening. Good evening, Raman साहब कैसे हैं?
Good evening, Anand ji. How are you?
I am good.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
आपका स्पीच सुना वो श्रीलंका वाला. It was very very interesting.
चीफ कॉस्ट अकाउंट्स ऑफिसर को भी कनेक्ट कर दिया उसमें.
That was very interesting. अभी ये लोग अभी ये लोग कुछ कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे वहाँ पर?
शुरू होने वाला है.
अच्छा शुरू होने वाला है. No, I was talking from the IMF thing basically because they are trying to revive their economy, na? These
politics will come slowly.
Okay. Politics is there also, yeah. That is right. That is right. Yeah.
Good evening, Raman sir.
Good evening.
Anand ji, good evening.
हाँ जी बुधिराज साहब, good evening.
कैसे हो?
ट्रैफिक में फंसे हुए हैं?
हाँ, गाड़ी में ही हूँ.
अच्छा. Very nice.
चलो गुड इवनिंग तो बोल दे, फिर घर में जाके देखते हैं.
अच्छा किया आपने. अच्छा किया. That's good.
Me and Buddhiraja ji enjoy the same birthday date.
Acha.
Sir, when we worked with you, it was a nice thing. Actually, whatever you have given us, we have learnt a lot from you.
It's all
So there are
mutual.
no denying factors. Whatever we are doing nowadays, because I know that we have done the project for this Department of Post. That project is very illustrious, and we are getting so much help from your report, whatever the report was prepared.
So, Sankalp, can we start?
Sir, some members are joining. Can we wait for 2-3 minutes?
Yeah, no issue, no issue.
If that is
Or
okay.
Sankalp, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
So, this seems to be a very active study circle.
Generally, we have tried that we get good speakers for the study circle, and we tend to give them a conducive environment so that knowledge sharing can happen in true sense. Otherwise, we always have this focus that the members who join the study circle, they get something out of this.
Good.
Actually, now this is the office time. People are
Right.
going back, so they may be connecting from their vehicles, basically.
Yeah, true. I came back. I'm at Noida just now today. Yesterday I landed up.
Oh, okay.
Greater Noida.
Okay. That's nice.
So going back tomorrow. I just came back from the client office at 5:30. I told Sankalp 6:30 is okay.
That's good. Oh, you are in Greater Noida or in Noida?
Greater Noida. That is some hotel called Woodman. UDMEN, Woodman.
Okay. Greater Noida is still a little better because less traffic and less all those things.
Yeah, in fact, I came back within 10-15 minutes. I came to the hotel.
Yeah.
Not locked up in traffic jam and things like that.
This side it is quite high. This side the traffic is quite heavy.
I think, sir, we can start now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We are very thankful to Shri CMA A N Raman ji for consenting to join us today. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India and associate member of C Institute. He is a BCom, then fellow member of ICMA Sri Lanka and a conferred member of CPA Australia. He articled in the division of the Pricewaterhouse and Company. He is the member of the Technical Advisory Board of ICMA of Sri Lanka and co-opted in the Technically Advisory Panel of Vivekanand College in the Commerce stream. In the past, he was the chairman of SIRC of our institute and was also the Central Council member of the institute between the tenures 1996 to 99 and 2007 to 11. He was nominated as the vice president of SAFA in 2010 and became its president in 2011. SAFA is an apex accounting body, South Asian Federation of Accountants, for 7 SAARC countries, and it is an acknowledged accountancy grouping of the IPAC. He is an internationally acclaimed expert on various nuances of cost management principles, including activity-based costing management, strategic cost management, value chain analysis, and target costing. He has an unparalleled distinction of scripting and introducing the whole concept of total cost management or TCM in a structured format to the Indian industry since 1996. One of the major milestones in the growth trajectory was introducing the world's first CII TCM maturity model. Uh, the CII TCM maturity model is a rating system that assesses and rates an organization's units, cost management practices, systems levels. The model calibrates the maturity level in cost management in five hierarchical layers with differentiating characteristics at each layer. The model's evolution to each hierarchical level provides strategic, operational, and invisible benefits in many forms and facets. So, I'm very grateful to our esteemed speaker for consenting to join us today. Of course, he's an authority on the subject, and we are very thankful to him that he'll be sharing his views today. So, without much further ado, I think as he requested us specifically that he doesn't want any time to be wasted on introductions. So let us start with the session. And I think today will be a very good session for all of us because we will we will just behave like an audience who would try to listen and learn as much as possible. And I request all the other members to keep uh, their meetings in mute mode. Otherwise, as an administrator, we will be doing mute ourselves. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Sankalp. Thank you. So nice of you. I am also thankful to MK Anand, and it's extremely nice to meet Mr. Budhiraja and some of my friends like Pradeep Kathuria on this evening Google Meet. So whenever there is an opportunity for me to share some of the thoughts on total cost management, its evolution, I never miss that opportunity. I always grab it. It's for the simple reason that this is one subject where I have been involved right from its conceptualization, introduction, enjoy articulating it, enjoy speaking it, and see that the industry practices it. Though the evolution has been in a very gradual way, but really I am seeing the soaking of this concept gradually and steadily in the Indian industry and the why even in non-manufacturing areas. There is a very strong background as to why I conceived this idea way back in the beginning of this century, around 2000 or somewhere around that, because that was a time where I entered into practice somewhere in 1990s, and with the conventional, at least youngsters today whom I am seeing a lot, I see a lot of areas and scope like insolvency and GST and things like that. But those days, when you take up a certificate of practice, I am speaking of 1990s, the areas were very less. Central excise, barring few areas in central excise and cost accounting and cost audit, nothing much was there. So it was a fight for the food, and to survive in this cruel world of not so much of scope, I had to blaze a different trail and reinvent myself and take a different path. So that was the background in which I noticed that the Indian industry, after the reforms started, the Indian industry was taking to quality management in a very big way. And that was the time when acronym like TPM and TQM started becoming very popular. And concepts like quality management and plant maintenance, which are more a functional work in an organization, like quality control was with quality department, maintenance was with maintenance department. We used to call this as supporting cost centers in our cost accounting architecture. Those departments which were at a functional level, they came to the forefront of the organization because of the quality movement. The quality movement and positioning of acceptance of Indian goods at a global level for high quality was making heavy inroads, and the corporate sector was taking to TQM in a very big way. Similar thing was happening in the field of TPM. So I was literally seeing in the last decade of the previous century, that is between 1990 and 2000, lots of Japanese experts invading India and training the Indian industry on how to improve the quality management. And they started telling, look at quality management not as a control function, but as a process. So it is a competency area. How to manage quality should be there right from the board till the last worker in a shop floor. So how to have quality strategy, how to drive quality inside companies, this became a major slogan. This also started happening in the field of maintenance, where it was a maintenance department. At best, we had the classification of civil engineering and mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, and of course, electronics. Beyond a department and a sub-department view, TPM became a way of life. So the 17 pillars of TPM and the Kaizen movement, when all these things were engulfing the Indian industry, I could very clearly see most of the industrial captains were all speaking of cost, quality, and delivery as the mantra for survival. Today, you have gone beyond all that. You are talking of manufacturing for digital manufacturing. So many things have happened now. But I'm speaking of those days. And as a result, the cost was spoken as a part of this QCD philosophy. But what was happening to the world of dunya of quality and the dunya of maintenance management was not happening in the world of cost. At best, cost was being spoken of in the context of COGS or the inventory valuation or for those days. And cost was not raising its head beyond an accounting level. A competitive wedge in terms of pricing in the global market. So the cost was in the uppermost mind in the boardrooms as well as in management, whereas in the reality, they were all in terms of techniques more resorting to cost accounting and whatnot. So this is the time where I noticed lots of developments happening in the world of costing itself globally. People were talking about activity-based costing and target costing, whatnot. So I decided, facing challenges on the practicing side and at that time just married, finding it difficult to meet the both ends. At that time, I decided to reinvent myself and innovate my pathway. And then came this concept and framework of total cost management. I started speaking about it, conceptualizing it, and that is when the Confederation of Indian Industry noticed this sort of articulation from one guy and something called TCM. So that is how the invitation from the then captains of industry, particularly from South, from the TVS group, they called me and said, "Hey guy, what is it you are talking? Let us listen." And this is how the breakthrough came. So the most important point is when we speak of total cost management, it is very important not to position as an accounting tool. It is a framework. And the whole purpose is, as much as quality management and maintenance became through TPM a very important managerial process inside companies, the very foundation of this TCM framework is to bring in a refreshing approach and make cost management as a process in companies, which will include cost accounting. So as a result of this, what happens, just like a rocket launch, when you put a satellite inside a rocket launch takes place. It goes out and crosses the gravity, and then satellite is positioned in an orbit. As far as I am concerned, cost and management accounting was my DNA, and that was at my heart. So I needed a rocket to position the cost and management accountant and accounting as a satellite. It should beam the required signal so that the cost competitive advantage comes up. So I needed a rocket for positioning cost and management accounting as a wonderful subject, and I took TCM as a rocket. So TCM as a framework or as a rocket, to use this analogy, I positioned it, and that is how the whole trajectory started happening. So what I would now like to do after this context setting for the benefit of all of you, I will share some of the slides and I will use the sharing function. In a second, I will open it up. So I will choose the entire screen. So now I am going to use the entire screen and I am saying share. And then I am going to now open the PowerPoint and will ask the question to Sankalp. Are you seeing the screen? Is a PowerPoint presentation?
I'm able to see it, but I think you will have to share this. Yes, now it's good.
Yeah, yeah. Now I am on the PowerPoint mode. So total cost management, please understand, is a framework. A framework means there are different building blocks of total cost management, and we need to understand each of its component. Don't look at it as another cost accounting subject considered about allocation of overheads and working out a format, preparing a cost sheet, or putting it as a part of a, yeah, SAP's controlling module. It is not like that. It is a framework. So why there is a need for this framework? There is a compelling imperative for this subject in the Indian industry, particularly today. What it was in 2000 is significantly the importance of this. This has become so high today, simply because of this VUCA. Most of you may be knowing this terminology of VUCA, of volatility, uncertainty, and complexity and ambiguity. So, in all this sort of environment, not only in India, companies across the globe do not know what is going to happen the next day. They are under tremendous pressure to improve profitability. This has been happening for the last 10 to 15 years, and more so now, the last few months, with the Chinese coming under scanner and the Ukraine war, the whole thing has got more compounded. As a result, today organizations are increasingly looking for an integrated and a sustainable approach, because today no longer you can look at making profit by degrading the environment or disturbing or disrupting the society. That is not possible. We need to be environmental friendly, we need to take care of the society, and hence a sustainable approach for doing business is now becoming important, and that too with the geopolitical shift. So, what do I mean by geopolitical shift? European companies and companies across the world, of course, subject to the recession which has now set in, they are all looking for India as a safe harbor, or at least if they were looking at 100% Chinese source as a cost advantage, they are now saying we would like to de-risk from China. 50% of, let us say, a share of sourcing from China should now shift to another offshore like India or Thailand or Taiwan or things like that. So this geopolitical shift is definitely, in addition to Atmanirbhar Bharat, opening up India as a source for supplying goods globally as well as within India. But only thing is, it has to be done at a competitive prices. So the geopolitical shift and the need for a competitive advantage, combined with the VUCA environment already happening, there is a compelling imperative for the Indian business today to adopt cost management techniques which need to be driven from the board. So this particular slide, which you just now went through, establishes why Indian industries and manufacturing and non-manufacturing are talking this sort of framework. So now, after having introduced little bit of ideas and concepts which have, I can use the word disruption. Maybe some of you in the audience, like me, we all come from the 1990s where we have learned the cost accounting in a particular way. Many of the ideas and practices of cost concepts have been significantly disrupted in the last decade or last 1.5 decade. These bullet points, which you find 8 bullet points on the screen, are basically the drivers towards the disrupting the cost structure. It's going to take some time for me to go through all this slide. So in this 1 hour or so, it may not be possible. But I would like to give you a flare of 1 or 2 or 3 of these bullet points, what you see on the screen, and make you feel the flavor what I am trying to talk about. So what is the impact which is happening in the business model, having a huge, yeah, disruption on the cost structure, which has always been conventionally we are looking at. You see at the bullet point number 5, branding and channel management cost. So today, with all this concern of online marketing and things like that, we are also looking at a new channel of e-marketing. But if you go back to somewhere in 1990s, 2000, and last decade, or first decade of this century, when the businesses started evolving, people started in a very big way towards branding. This is where the valuation as a subject started evolving, because brands need to be valued, and brand valuation is not a traditional subject of the financial accounting, or even for that matter cost management or cost accounting. So if you go back to the typical cost accounting structure of the yesteryears, very little literature you will find focusing on what is the meaning of a channel cost structure. The reason being, fundamentally, traditionally, the cost accounting is always built around a factory. The moment we speak of costing, earlier it was our institute itself was called as a cost and works accountants, meaning the whole origin was from works, which is a factory. So the entire subject is more focused on how to account for materials, how to account for labor, how to account for overheads. So even if you see the architecture of SAP, you will find working out the COGS being given a very huge focus, because at COGS we need to do the inventory valuation or the WAP valuation, and hence working the cost at that level, factory plays a very major role. But what has really happened is, with the advent of marketing strategies and positioning, companies are very seriously looking at branding themselves and as well as creation of channels suitable to you. So what do I mean by channels? I want to reach the end customer, but for me, creating an organization structure becomes very tough. So I make a B2B marketing. From my business, it goes to another business. But between the business and reaching the last mile consumer come the channels. Where there could be various types of channels. There could be direct retail marketing. There could be distribution managers. There could be logistics companies. So different multiple channels connect the factory and the customer, or the first distribution point and the customer. So that has become a science by itself. As much as you look at the factory today, you look as much about how to manage channels. A company can have multiple channels. There could be commission agents, there could be stockists, there could be dealers, there could be service dealers, and there could be sales dealers. And beyond these dealers, you also have now the e-marketing. There could be e-marketing channels. So all these things have made channel management as a very important structure. As a result, what happens, if you look at the cost structure today of typical FMCG companies or consumer durables, if at the factory level, the cost is, let's say, 50% including the materials cost, or 55% including the materials cost, the channel management cost also becomes another 25%, because a very important part here, if there is a MOP, market price, from MOP, there is something which is taken out by channel, and ultimately the cost to the consumer is high. But the overheads or the cost incurred by the channel will not be coming into your entity itself. You will be cutting off after the dealer's price. The cost incurred by the dealer and how he builds up his margin will all come as a part of the MOP itself. So like this, channel management, if you look at the overall chain, that cost seriously disrupts our traditional understanding of the cost structure. This is one example of this particular slide. One more important example, what I would like to make you to look into this is, you see the last but one bullet point, disruptive changes in the business models. Business model is nothing but what product market you are focusing, what are all the customer segments you are focusing, where you would like to sell and all that. Today, with rapidly increasing competition and suddenly the overseas markets coming to you, competitors coming to you, you don't know what is happening in terms of an innovation tracking. There are very disruptive changes happening quickly and rapidly in business models. So what you thought you had a competitive advantage in the first half or the last quarter suddenly changes at the reality, and someone else is knocking away and tries to sell a different type of product. Like, what is happening in the world of e-vehicles. If you take the case of e-vehicles, the two-wheeler industry was resisting the electric vehicles for a very long time. But someone somewhere started introducing this, and now you find people are looking or switching over to e-vehicles, and e-vehicles have become a disruptive change in the automobile sector itself, because right from the engine design and transmission design, the e-vehicles are making a very big impact in the product structure as well as in the business models. So when the business models change fast, you need to look at your cost structure quickly at a strategic level. You would like to understand whether you want to drop a product line fast or you want to make a product modification changes fast. So disruptive changes in the business models make you think not more at a factory cost or things like that, but what is your market segment? Where are you competing? Are you going to maintain your competitive advantage? If I am going to lose the competitive advantage because some innovation has come disrupting my presence, so how do I react to that? These are all the type of challenges which are coming up today in a very big way. Now, the last point is one thing which I want to little bit articulate more. Price is more related today to the value addition what the customer wants and not the cost accounted in the costing system or the management accounting system. So what do I mean by that? If a customer wants to buy a washing machine in the marketplace, first of all, he takes the price. And if I am a high-end customer willing to pay some 20,000 rupees or advanced IoT-enabled washing machine, that may be a customer segment like that. Or I may be a customer who don't want any frills, a simple washing machine. I would like to have a simple washing machine without any additional features. So when I do a mental comparison like this, what I'm doing is I'm benchmarking the price as a customer who has to buy that product with the value proposition what I want. So as a customer, I may prefer a low-end vanilla washing machine, or I may not prefer a vanilla washing machine. I may want a high-end washing machine, or I may be another type of customer where I don't want to go for a low-end, nor I want to go for an extreme high-end, but I want to have a midpoint. So this sentence is what I have used results in what is called as a value laddering by the industry today or the service sector today. So they position the customers, the market segment in terms of various value points and the price they want to pay. So the price goes up or the price goes down based on the scope of the features what the customer wants. This has got nothing to do with the cost. So the price in the market is benchmarked, rolled or scaled up and down based on the value proposition which a company is offering in the market at a competitive price. And if the customer is happy with the value in terms of quality and the features and at a competitive price, I go for that and the market share of that company goes up. It is for the company to pick up the market share at a market determined price and then align its cost. It is not the reverse. So when I was a student and when we were articulating the cost accounting in a very big way, the game was working out the cost of the products and WIPs very carefully and right up to the second decimal, add a margin, fix a price, and then tell marketing, this is the minimum price I want from the market. So that cost price dunya has paved way for the price and the value dunya. So in this dunya of price value customer driven world, the cost management should look at more balancing the features, cost and value. So today, the game is more for the companies and the supplier of goods and services. It's a value cost balancing, and the future of management accounting has to be 50% value and 50% costing. If I am adept in looking these two as the two sides of the same coin. So here what I mean by value is not an accountant's definition of value addition. So how do I define as an accountant the value addition? Sales minus material cost is value. I don't mean that. Cost is the money in resources incurred in my accounting system, but value is what customer wants from that product. It can be a functional value, it can be an aesthetics value, it can be a prestige value, or the product, it can be a life cycle value. I don't want to have a product for 10 years and all that. In another 6 months, I want to discard. So I want a product with a shorter life cycle. So here, it's a shorter life cycle is a value. So how the value declaration takes place in the market, that is the other side of the coin. So the future cost and management accountants in the next generation should be very adept. Just like they capture cost, work out the cost of the product or a service, and coming up with the profitability, they should be very equally adept in understanding how the value creation for the customer and other stakeholders take place in the marketplace, and whether my cost structure is aligned with the value creation. So this last bullet point, I have examined 3 of these 8 bullet points for you. This 8 factors, making it's not exhaustive, there may be few more. These 8 drivers are making a huge impact, a humongous impact on the cost structure. As a result, the way the industries looked at costing, they looked at the cost accounting function in the past as a subset of financial accounting, is no more valid. And thus was the concept of, or the framework of, total cost management. What all difficulties I faced the last 15 years when I started propagating this concept? Nothing is easy. When you talk something new, there will be a huge resistance. First of all, the resistance comes from the cost accounting community itself. So when you speak of TCM, there will be some segment, they said, no, this is not meant for. When I started talking about TCM to marketing guys and production guys, the initial resistance from the no, this cost is not meant for us. It is for cost and financial accountants, go and talk to them. There would be some other people who will say, what is this TCM? It is another way of a cost accounting only. It's not concerned about gaining competitive advantage. Though in my own presence in one global cost summit, I heard someone speaking, TCM cannot compete with cost audit. He just made a reckless statement without knowing what is total cost management and what is cost audit, because he didn't understand what total cost management is all about. And someone said, if I had implemented a very good SAP, it's a very good cost control system, that is good enough. And someone else said, no, TPM or TQM, if I implement, that will take care of my waste elimination. Why should I need a TCM? Then there is another set of people who would say TCM is meant for manufacturing business and not for me. And last but not the least, the SAP consultants or the Oracle consultants those days would come and tell, if there is a very good ERP implementation, it will automatically take care of what Mr. Raman says as a total cost management. These are all real myths. Partly they may be true, but wholly they are myths. They need to understand in depth what one really means by total cost management. Is it really an ERP implementation? Does it take care of all the concepts of TCM? These are all the challenges which I would like you to understand in the coming slides. So now, saying that none of the earlier slides, what is called as what people dismissed the total cost management, then what really is the total cost management is all about, and why there should be a special focus on total cost management. So we positioned cost management by saying that cost management practices are the key to sustainability and competitiveness. It is not an accounting system. It is not another way of allocating cost and things like that. For the simple reason, traditionally, cost in all these tradition-bound companies, they were seeing cost as an outcome of the accounting process. They were never looking at cost as a managerial or a strategic process. So the TCM, in its definition and description, we positioned the TCM cost as a reflection of the managerial process consisting of strategic processes and operational processes. Because of this, TCM is a company-wide systematic approach. Wherever a strategy gets implemented or an operations get implemented, accordingly TCM is structured, which provides a holistic framework to control, reduce, and eliminate waste throughout the value chain of the business. For example, my material cost is 90%, and I am doing a lot of outsourcing, and the complete input comes from my tier 1 suppliers or tier 2 suppliers. So here, TCM would be more implemented in my vendors. So it is a holistic value chain. I need to push more the implementation of TCM framework in my sources of suppliers. It can be a tier 1 or a tier 2 buyer. TCM recognizes, as I just now told you, cost is incurred while creating value. Cost is not incurred by booking an expenditure in the financial accounting system or in manufacturing. Look at cost as something which is an outlay always in creating value for the customer or the other stakeholders. You need cost to it to be incurred, because that dimension cost creates value. So if a cost does not create value either for the customer or for the other stakeholders, there is no need for the cost to be present there. So the value measurement should be higher than the cost measurement. That is, the index should be more than one. So these were all some of the reasons why we said we need to introduce TCM, and as a result, the visibility of the cost impact should be there throughout the organization. For example, if a worker improves quality, he understands what is the factor driving quality in my operational issues. He should also know, if I do this operation this way, then this will be the cost impact. So how do I create my own cost analysis as a worker at the lowest point of an organization? At the highest point of an organization, at a board level, how should I look at a strategy cost analysis? So if you look at the visibility at the highest level of the board and the governance, the type of cost structuring and its component will be reflecting the strategic thinking, whereas the visibility of the cost at the operational level should be reflecting the operational issues. So TCM as a philosophy, because of this wide scale and scoping, is fast catching up, but of course, organizations are gradually understanding that this is how we bring in a cost-focused organization. So now, after having presented to you how the TCM is being peddled or pushed or driven inside organizations, now comes a typical framework of TCM, what it contains. So if you look at the central bubble, the central part of a TCM is a business strategy. So when I started becoming a cost accounting student, when I visited factories those days in 1980s and 1990s for cost audit, the first thing I would be told is visit the factory, understand the process. So factory was a central theme of a cost accounting process. But today, a typical cost management, it is not about starting point is not the factory. Factory is one of the element, but you should start it from the business strategy. So business strategy is a central on which the building blocks of cost accounting or cost management should take place. And the remaining five bubbles or six bubbles, what you see, they move around or built around a business strategy. So in this TCM framework, which has been now issued as an official document from the Confederation of Indian Industry, it has business strategy at its heart, and the remaining building blocks consist of TCM tools, TCM processes, maturity levels in TCM, what should be the outcomes in a TCM enabled organization, what KPIs we need to look at, and what are all the TCM principles. If an organization is going to effectively relate the TCM to a strategic business environment, what happens? The strategic inputs which you see on the left side in the form of the globalization or the competitive world or the volatility hitting them or the competitiveness issues coming and hitting them hard, price pressure coming from the commodities. Amidst all this, if a TCM enabled organization can look at strategic outcomes in the form of being resilient for all these changes, being sensitive to the customer value, having an efficient value chain in managing the changes, a very resilient cost structure, and last but not the least, it should be a sustainable profit, because I am not looking at profit by spoiling the environment or disrupting the society. So the left side tells you the inputs and outcomes, whereas the central theme gives you the framework. So in another 30 minutes or so, I am going to explain some of these bubbles, which will tell you what TCM framework is all about. While explaining the bubbles, I'll also touch upon how this gets applied, because the theme is also about application of this framework in organizations. So let me take this first bubble, which is the first bubble of what is a business strategy and how that becomes a central theme. So why TCM and strategy are very strongly correlated? Against the generalized view of cost management as a way to reduce or cost reduction or waste elimination, TCM should be aligned well with the business strategy, because to achieve the long-term sustainable advantage. So what do we mean by that? We mean by that every business which undergoes a strategic thinking, recast its 3-year business plan or 3 to 5 year plan, it starts understanding the customer requirements and embeds the required value proposition in the products and services rendered in the marketplace. So value and value proposition from the customers is a starting point. With such an understanding of the market segment and segmented thinking, it links up the TCM because TCM's core approach is to identify, analyze, and address the differential cost of producing and servicing the strategic customer. Like, let's say, for example, I'm having a market segment 1 and a market segment 2, but I'm having a same product band. In market segment 1, customer value proposition is richer, whereas in market segment 2, the customer value proposition is not so rich. So I need to understand and align my cost structure with the value proposition. So what is the differential cost for the differential value between the segment 1 and the segment 2? If that is thrown up in my TCM's core approach, then I align myself with the strategy. How do I do this? This TCM links cost to the value creation and over time helps increase the value per cost unit and also improves the bottom line. This is how the strategic thinking gets very, very clearly articulated in the TCM approach. Practically, how it is done in organizations is basically the crux of the coming up stories. So how that is done? This is how an organization, if you see this diagram, undergoes a strategic planning. There could be, for example, a foundry, it could be a cast iron foundry, it could be aluminum foundry, or it can be an FMCG marketing. It is facing competition. So what it does once in a year, it always either reviews its growth strategy or plans new entry in new markets. So it makes an analysis of the market, competition, what products, what pricing pressures. So how do I manage my distribution channel? So it is a sort of a SWOT analysis, which defines my strategic thinking for the next 2 to 3 years. So once I formulate my strategy, I come up very clearly what are all the customer segments I am going to look at. How do I reach my customers in various segments with their desired value? This is called as an internal process. So if a new customer is wanting, for example, a new alloy and a new product with the different levels of, for example, an engineering machinability, he wants a shorter life but durability. So then I need to know how in terms of metallurgy I need to do this product. So far I have not been doing this, and hence I will require a learning and growth processes. So all this should translate into financials. This is where in the strategic planning strategy is formulated. This is implemented through IT, and then the third block, I need an IT strategy which links up with my business strategy. So once I have this, it spans out into this circular bubbles, what you see. As a result of this strategy, what happens in any company in an annual business plan, I would know what are all my target markets and current markets. I would know what are all my target products and my current products. I would know what are all the risks involved in expanding into the products or dropping the existing products. As a result, I would know how to forecast my EBITDA, which is risk articulated. So I would know what are all my target new processes which will be required. Right now, I don't have these processes at all. Like, for example, I have to do e-marketing, and I don't have that sort of processes right now. So how do I create e-enabled processes, target new processes, create infrastructure and training for new processes? And I need to do all these things without disrupting the environment or my employees or my society. I need to take care of them. These small circular bubbles which you see on the right side of the screen is a result of a typical strategic document. So as a result, now you see this diagram. Strategy spans out in a typical organization called target customers, target products, the third block, which is in terms of the number, which is the fourth block, target processes, and the last block, what are all the risks involved in this, so that my cost structure because of the risk can go haywire. So I should know my strategy translated in terms of target customers versus current customers, target products versus current products, with the articulated target cost versus current cost, the targeted new processes, both business and non-manufacturing and manufacturing, and what are all the risks involved in implementing this so that when a risk happens, my resultant cost structure doesn't eat away my profitability. So when a strategy gets translated into these rectangular boxes from circular boxes, this gets locked into my cost management framework through this process. So you can see this diagram. How does it get into my cost management strategy? Let's look at this diagram. I have understood my strategy. I have translated the strategy in terms of customer segments, risk involved, the target product segments, and the target processes. So let us say now I'm entering into a new target segment where there is a target price. Now there is a target for me. I should reach my market share of, let's say, 5% in year one. And if I don't increase my market share to 15% in year two, my strategy will not be sustainable. So this 5% and 15% volume buildup can happen only at a target price. So here what happens? A subject called target pricing for a given market segment volume comes in. The moment you talk about target pricing, you cannot make losses unless strategically you want to make losses in year one and year two and recoup the losses in the third year, by which stage some small competitor may come and you may lose. So the target pricing, which is now required for capturing 5% and 50% market share, should happen at a target cost, and that target cost should successfully create value. I cannot be incurring loss just for taking a new volume. So the moment I am talking about target pricing and target costing, target cost, now what tool I need in my organization? So far I have been doing a cost accounting based on historical cost analysis. Now I come to a tool called target costing, in which I don't have any practice. I don't know how to map my customer value proposition, what the customers want, whether I am incurring the related cost. My cost is more material, labor, overheads, but I do not know whether the costs are delivering the value. Let's say a product has got 5 features: feature A, feature B, feature C, feature D, feature E. So what all my cost accounting has been doing all these years, I have got materials coming from BOM cost, labor coming from my labor rate analysis, and overheads coming from my machine rate or labor rate analysis, and my cost sheet consisting of material, labor, overheads. And totally, let us say 1,000 rupees is my total cost. Now comes a situation, I want to break this 1,000 into feature A is 250 rupees, feature B is 200 rupees, feature C is costing me 100 rupees, and totally if I add up all this cost, there is a target, it should not exceed 800. If my current cost is 1,000 and my target cost is 800 for all these 5 features, in no way I can achieve this 5% and 10% or 15% market share. I need to compress my cost, make a 10% margin. So here a cost value mapping is required. Accordingly, a cost management action should start. These are all the areas where the best tool possible is target costing. This is exactly where the cost and management accounting dunia now would say, hey guys, now you look at this target costing as a tool. Who should be the owner? Not the cost accountant. The design engineer and the marketing man, they should now pick up the cost management processes in the company. For this sort of strategy where target costing becomes important, these are the marketing guys and the design guys, new product development guys. They need to learn a tool called target costing, and this tool will be taught in this particular institute or in this curriculum or in these companies have picked up, go and learn or attend these training programs and pick up knowledge on target costing. Let the HRA come into a TCM process, organize training programs and target costing to my R&D engineers. So once the target cost is there, the shop floor engineers, once the manufacturing starts, the way in which cost control should happen, it is very intense. If my actual cost goes beyond 800, I am killed. So the shop floor need to be trained on looking at basic cost drivers which make the actual cost more than 800. There should be on a real-time basis enabled at a shop floor level or at a procurement level or at a marketing level to control a marketing cost or a procurement cost or a manufacturing cost, looking at basic drivers and maintain a cost of less than 800. So if I need that talent, HRA guys come in, hey, now this is a time where we need a tool of TCM called cost driver analysis. So let us introduce this training program on cost driver analysis to the shop floor guys or the procurement guys. So what happens? To implement a strategy which you see on the left side, translated into a strategy for execution through a business plan on the central side, you need tools which are in the form of the small bubbles on the right side, which you need to pick and choose depending on the strategy. Every tool may not be relevant for all strategies. Some companies' target costing may be important. Some companies' customer profitability may be important. For some companies, cost of quality may be important. Depending upon the strategy, in a typical TCM process, I pick and choose a relevant tool and introduce this training as a part of the strategy implementation process. So after this, you can see what I have put everything now. Strategy as a central platform and talk and articulate every damn thing on costing as to how to implement strategy in the new market segments, in the new business models, and the new products I am focusing. So when you speak this language, you get that rocket launch going beyond the gravity. You are not getting into a cost accounting process. Yeah. Please mute.
Yes, muted, sir.
So you are looking at the cost management tools which are available and make it as a company-wide presentation. So as a result, what happens now? You look at this strategy coming up from how to deploy this. So I come from my corporate objectives. I am on a cost leadership journey. I translate my cost leadership journey in terms of how to realize the strategies. And this strategy, it can be strategy cost area or it can be operational cost area. If it is a strategic cost area relating to material cost, initiatives like localization or alternative sourcing or zero-based costing or what is called as a should cost modeling or what is called as a vendor cost down approaches. So all these tools are picked and chosen and they are deployed in terms of the strategic thinking. If it is an operational cost area, nothing new, Baba, existing cost, but I need a cost reduction and a waste elimination. Then I get into tools like, if you see on the right side, ABC, activity-based costing at an operational level, not at a strategic level, linking cost with Kaizen, which is called as a Kaizen costing, bringing cost into quality circles, which means shop floor cost management, how to bring in bring down the overhead in terms of the strategic thinking. How do I restructure my operations? So all this sort of ABC modeling or cost center modeling, either at an operational level or at a strategic level, they flow from the corporate objectives and they get deployed, maybe in a procurement stage, maybe in a design stage, maybe in a market segmentation stage, maybe in a quality stage. Depending upon the strategy, it becomes a company-wide process. So this is how strategy becomes the central part. Now I move to the next part of the presentation where you saw the one important bubble here. You can notice in this circle. So first I explained to you the business strategy. Then I explained to you how the TCM tools get connected. But all these things can happen. There is an overarching bubble on the left side, which you call as a TCM principles. So this TCM principles is what I am going to quickly go through, but I don't want to do it very elaborately because most of them you will understand. Wherever I need to emphasize or tweak, I will bring it a little bit more amplification. So if you bring in TCM as the principles basically you may be knowing, like for example, cost accounting standards are principle based. IFRS are principle based. Principles are nothing but behavioral standards. That is, when I talk of a framework, when I talk of principles, this should be at my governing behavior. I should behave as per this principle. That is the meaning of principles, and you don't go down to rules. You should be good means you should be good. You can't explain in rule how to be good. You should be good at heart. That is approach of what is called as a principle based behavior. So any TCM framework, the first principle is resource focus. I brought this as a first in the principle because of my selfish attitude that cost and management accounting should get a big boost through this particular framework. Resource deployment in the business is purported to add value to the product or customer service. You add value only because resource consumption takes place. So, and hence, resource and value should be strongly connected, and hence, resource focus is very important. So, here we not only talk of the resources which are based on the accounting system, but resources based on the value chain thinking. That is important. Normally, if you talk of a cost accounting, we speak of more internally accounted cost in the double entry bookkeeping with entry of the with the boundary of the entity within the four walls what the P&L account has registered. But when I speak of a resource focus in the value chain, I go beyond my boundary. I should look at how my distributors are creating value for me or the dealers are creating value for the customers. In turn, the resources spent by the dealer, whether they are lesser than the value created. So value should be more and resources should be less, and that should beyond an entity, you should get into the value chain thinking. So as a cost and management accountant in an organization, when I start also speaking of the cost structure of my vendors, my vendor's vendor, or my stockist, or my dealers, or my logistics. So the moment I do that, my span of thinking goes beyond an organizational level. So immediately the board or the management understands this is a guy who is not a traditional cost accounting entity bound approach. He's thinking of a value chain because that is how today companies speak of strategy. The second important is the strategic cost, which I have context, which I have explained to you enough. But only the additional point here is historical cost accounting has been at the heart of us for a very long time, including the cost audit. We don't speak of future cost. But the moment you speak of TCM, a huge time should be spent on the future cost. That is, what cost is going to be incurred in next 6 months, how it is going to change in this year, what sort of target costs which are yet to be reached in the organization. So the futurist impact in the strategic context is very, very important from a cost accounting angle. From a TCM angle, which is not so important in a cost accounting angle. So now, if you look at these 2 points, one of the how the framework happens in a typical TCM, resources are the building blocks. You can see the beginning point. The typical TCM consists of resources, activities, business processes, cost drivers, product cost, and customer cost. So when they are related to the strategy and operational focus, the resources get a strategic lift or an operational push based on the strategic thinking of an organization. Whichever way you want to give focus is up to the business model. So one example. Now I come to the application of one important connect with as far as the TCM strategy and resources is concerned. An enterprise pursuing total cost management in a tier 1 vendor of several aircraft manufacturing companies in the West. As you know, in India, except now for the after this HAL started, Atmanirbhar started, particularly in aeroplanes like Boeing or Airbus, they're always there abroad, and they buy from you as a third or fourth in the vendor tire in the tire. This particular company is a tier 1 vendor because it makes products which go into the body of a plane. Quality is a very stringent critical parameter. You cannot afford to be non-quality oriented in the aircraft industry. Several quality management processes were there across the enterprises, this particular company's value chain. And it will be different. Bombardier will be doing differently. Boeing will cost different quality levels. Airbus as a customer will cost different quality levels, stringent issues. But in the company's cost accounting mechanism or measurement mechanism, there was no differentiation in the standard operating procedures for measuring cost, whereas the quality standard operating procedures, there was a huge differentiation. This enterprise was pursuing customer satisfaction goal and excelling in that, but without the knowledge of how cost varies due to quality between various enterprises, and that knowledge was buried in their overhead accounting mechanism. So this company started measuring COQ as one of the important tools in the right bubble, what you saw, as an operational tool to focus on the costing architecture to measure quality customer wise, and this became a very important talking point to the managing customers. So companies like Boeing or Airbus were surprised to know the amount or impact of the cost which they are creating due to the stringent operations, and it became very easy for negotiating for this company in terms of pricing with the customers to get the real price for the value addition. So there are other few TCM principles which are coming as a part of the 9 principles built into the TCM bubble, that it is not about historical cost, but the future outlook, the future cost, how the cost structure is going to be in future. Concepts like life cycle costing over the life of the product, 5 years or 10 years. 10-year product is there shayad only in the automobile, but less than that, what is the cost in the life cycle, and how should the target cost look at a life cycle cost becomes very important issues by bringing in have a future outlook as a principle in the TCM architecture. Then it's very important that TCM cannot be in isolation. It has to integrate with other initiatives. Companies will have to think, when I am a very strong TQM company or a strong TPM company, or I am implementing theory of constraints, or I am implementing business excellence approach of the European Foundation, with all other initiatives of improving my excellence in the organization, how do I align TCM? So if I don't integrate as a principle, integrated thinking doesn't come in aligning TCM, it's bound to be a failure. As a result of the TCM introduction, there will be a lot of learning required of new tools, new ideas, new measurement techniques, and this is where the HRM comes in to push the learning process across the organization and not in the costing department alone. So this is one example. I will skip this because I have given to you enough inputs on this. I'm going ahead with the other principles. It's about enterprise-wide involvement. If you take one entity, it is not about cost accountants or the management accountants in the company alone picking up the TCM knowledge. It's all about how should I implement TCM. The designer should know, the marketing man should know, the procurement man should know. It is all about an enterprise-wide involvement. So the involvement as a principle should be there enterprise-wide. It should be aligned to policy deployment. Suppose I am one of the buyer working in, let us say, the plastic related parts buying in the procurement department. To me, TCM would mean nothing unless I know in the procurement of the plastic parts, how do I create an impact in the plastic content in the different products and their profitability. I would know only if there is a strong policy deployment tool. So if you go into companies like Toyota and visit their shop floor manufacturing system, you will find this policy deployment very strong. Like for example, I want some 50,000 rupees cost reduction in the Innova, a new model Innova. That 50,000 will be broken up into various parts. How much will come from paint shop? How much will come from press shop? That sort of deployment would be there. If that sort of deployment would be there, it will be pushed down to the supervisor level in a paint shop or at a worker level in a paint shop. This is called as a policy deployment strategies in organizations today, known by the name Hoshin Kanri in Japan. So every industry, every company today resorts to this policy deployment. And if I connect the TCM with the policy deployment, I really win the game. It becomes a game changer. So one example of a typical FMCG company, how they connected TCM in a policy deployment. In an FMCG company on a TCM journey in a fairly highly mature, high maturity of TCM, cost reduction targets were derived from the business plan at a product level and at a process level. These were then aligned or allocated as cost goals for monitoring across the enterprise value chain. Through this policy deployment, PDCA cycle was used by the people to assess the progress in reaching the cost goals. Another example is the OEM company manufacturing what is called the off-the-road equipment, whose one of the employees is also participating in today's Google Meet of Sankalp Wadhwa. This particular company manufacturing off-the-road equipment and other earth-moving equipment uses policy deployment, a tool called X Matrix, to transmit the cost targets coming from the TCM initiative and create across the organization. They introduce a concept called total cost of ownership to measure the use of the products by the customers. So if a customer breakdown of a major equipment is there and customer suffers loss, that cost also should come into the cost deployment. It is very funny that how can a customer facing cost can come into my cost matrix, but that is the way TCM takes this deployment to the last level. And last but not the least, some of the ideal principles which are involved. It is a process-oriented principle, not only a manufacturing process, but across the business process, and a cross-linked process-oriented thinking should be there. Like, for example, if I buy from a vendor who has got a poor quality, but my material cost can be low in terms of supplier pricing, the landed price may be low, but because of an inferior quality, there may be a quality deviation, there may be a shop floor disruption, there may be a customer complaint, the life cycle cost may go up, but the vendor price may be low. So here, if I don't have a process orientation, the full impact cost would not be visible of sourcing component from a low cost vendor, whereas a typical cost flow can capture a low cost vendor is not really a low cost, but really a high cost. Process orientation helps in that. And finally, all these things should finally result in a very good performance for the company. There are illustrations from a battery manufacturer and from an FMCG, how they, by applying this process and performance orientation, reap the benefits of implementing a typical TCM approach. You can say, for example, a typical battery manufacturer faced a lot of changeovers in that line because of a small order execution. Someone wants 2 batteries, but it's a unique battery, but I need to take that order because it's a small lot. But only thing is, because of this product variety and complexity, I make even small changeovers. Resources incurred in changeover earlier were not measured because it was buried in a typical cost center. The changeover cost has got implications in various cost centers, including quality assurance and in laboratory, in supply chain, and even in the finance function. So they started measuring when I do a changeover for a small, let's say 2 battery as a small lot, how the changeover impacts completely in process orientation and what really happens when a changeover cost structure is incurred. So when you bring this concept in an organization which has got a huge variety and they make small lots, they will be really interested to know how their business strategy of even catering to the smallest customer creates a cost impact for them and how should they gear themselves up. So all these things would result in, that means, how can I then implement such a strongly embedded TCM process? I need a very strong governing structure. So a TCM as a framework can be adopted in an organization only if the governance structure is strong. So that means unless the MD speaks of TCM and declares a TCM policy for the company, has regular review meetings with the head of marketing, head of quality, and head of production, that doesn't get deployed at all. So a typical TCM framework requires a very strong governance structure. It requires a very high IT-enabled architecture, particularly today with all the digitization. And calibrating TCM competencies, because overnight I can't reach, there has to be skill levels. Some employee was working till 6 months back, he has resigned. Some new employee has been absorbed. So that new employee, whether he has undergone training in the TCM competency. So I need a very good HRM who takes care of TCM as a training structure. So for example, you can see in this company which is called Subros in Noida, they regularly, when the employees reshuffle and new employees come in or old employees are reshuffled in new departments, regular sessions are held in classes for these employees how to look at cost. So if you see on the bottom of this slide, you find what is called as a visual control charts, how the costs are tracked, how they are acted upon, and how the waste is eliminated should be improved in terms of the visual starts. So they are given a sensitization flow called cost awareness, cost understanding, cost driver identification, what is a permissible and what is a non-permissible cost, and they achieve cost control over their activities either through a Kaizen or a QC or a TPM initiative. So the employee training becomes a part of this process, what you just now saw in the left bubble, calibrating TCM competency skills among employees. So as a result of all these processes, what happens? A typical costing, which was considered more as an accounting function, it gets tagged or connected with the strategy of an organization, which cannot be implemented unless I take all the people along. So this is how the TCM articulation has taken place. And finally, we have created this maturity level. I start with zero level maturity, which is level 1, and fifth level is the highest level. So how do I move along? This is where what Sankalp said as a maturity model has been created for CII, which has been patented as the world's first innovation of how to measure a process by which I measure the maturity level of employees or the organization in terms of understanding of cost concepts and how do I implement and relating to strategy, and how do I rate the progress in terms of level 1, level 2, level 3. There is a very good marking mechanism. Today, you will find this maturity leveling and ranking. You will find in TPM, you will find in TQM, in many other areas, this maturity level rating and marking have already become operational. So this is how I have covered to you all this framework. I have spoken about TCM tools. I have spoken about TCM processes. I have spoken about business strategy in the central. I have spoken about TCM levels, TCM outcomes, and the key performance indicators which are used in the operational and strategic level. And above all, the principles which govern the behavior of a TCM-enabled organization. And to sum up in the last slide, which is now I am reaching 1 hour and 10 minutes, many companies which you find on the screen have started passionately pursuing this policy. Only some of that I have put on the screen because you will know these brands in terms of JSW Steel, ITZ, Marico, FFCG, Tata Motors, TVS, Subros in Noida. All these companies have started this TCM journey passionately, and that is how a TCM as a maturity model is gradually spreading in various parts of the country, further fueled by annually a cost congress is conducted by CII by bringing various peoples from these companies and more companies as to how they are practicing this in their organizations. So this is all what I have. Thanks for listening to you. Maybe Sankalp can spend some time in asking questions or things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. A very enlightening presentation. So I went through the presentation. There are two questions which I would like to ask. One of them is, can you elaborate on the CII TCM framework? What role has it played in the Indian industry since it has started? So how has been the change? Has it been accepted wonderfully, or and after once the company takes on the TCM framework maturity model, what kind of changes have they did they the changes were in the positive sense, and were they anticipated, those changes? So I would like to know more about that.
There are both cases, companies which have not felt the benefit, if you want to be frankly answered about that. There are companies which have felt immense benefit. So what happens in this maturity model, that I will tell first, and then I will talk about the benefits. What happens is, when you are invited for an assessment from CII, you go there. First, understand the strategy of the company, what business strategy, what competitors they have, and how they should, what they are doing for addressing the cost competitiveness to be present in the market. So once you get the grip, the starting point is for strategy, and then once you get the grip, you start looking at the measurement and action plans in various functions of that organization, like procurement, design, marketing, cost accounting, all including cost accounting, which is only 10%. 90% you spend in all functions, how they work and achieve cost targets. If they are not connected with the business strategy and there is a disconnect, you document it as a report and tell them if the connect is very high, very solid, they're at the maturity level 5. So there are some 1,000 marks are there. If they are crossing some 800 marks, then the maturity level is high. If it is nothing is there of that sort, and they are doing only traditional cost accounting and submitting to the reports to the MCA, but cost accounting system is quite good, but not connected to the strategy, they will go down in terms of marking. So we will say a good cost accounting is there or a bad cost accounting is there, but how it is disconnected with the strategy and why it is not giving the desired results. So you will give that pathway. So once you get the pathway with the recommendations, these companies, what they are supposed to do, they are supposed to take act upon that suggestions. Companies which have not acted upon the suggestion, they don't see the benefit, and they will continue to do what they have been doing, and it will be a luck if they succeed, and if they don't have success in their marketplace, they realize their folly. There are companies where they want solutions from you. Here, what you are doing, you are only showing the mirror to them and telling them where you are wrong. But companies which expect solutions from you, look, you are using this material, start using this material so that there is a cost reduction. So you are not meant for that. Like, for example, you are introducing a TCM system. It is a system consultancy. You don't get into how to improve quality. Only the methods you teach. So companies which expect you to give solutions to TCM, they don't take it seriously and they think it is not useful for them. This is how the story has evolved. But the spread is continuously increasing, but at a low pace. The biggest resistance is coming from the accounting community because they are mixing up with cost accounting or the financial accounting, or they have implemented SAP. It is the same. Aisa karke they give misleading indicators and spoil the show. That is one major reason why the spread is low.
So, relating to this, when we do costing assignments and even budgets, of course, not similar to TCM. The main contention of the clients is that in India, cost prices are very low. So automatically, many times they feel that it is not a necessity of implementing such costing related frameworks and things. How do we convince them that TCM actually is a value addition to the whole organization, and we cannot link it with the prices being low or high? Would like to know your views on this.
My view is that very simple. The moment you speak of a cost accounting system, they get a nightmare of accounting and allocation of overheads and elaborate system and all that. So where the prices are low and they don't want a material cost accounting, TCM doesn't say you should have an accounting overhead allocation. We don't say that. Even a traditional standard costing is also okay. It's irrelevant if it's relevant. Or even if it is a material costing, where the 90% of my cost structure is materials, 10% only is the conversion cost and the profit. I have only 90%. Even here, the TCM is relevant, but only thing is push the relevance to the variable cost and relate now with the value addition. The problem we face is if you speak only of cost, there is a problem. You relate it to a value addition. Very recently, I had a success in this example where the company was complaining their 90% capacity utilization, but loss is there. They will never come up in that whatever be the product they are focusing. So I did not do anything relating to the cost accounting. Simply, I compare the realization minus material cost. This doesn't require cost accounting. It's simply a gross margin calculation. But what I did was I laddered that in terms of the value proposition. They are having a high value adding products, they are having a low value proposition. What they were doing is, because they wanted to grab the orders for the top line, they were taking a value adding products at a price of a standard product. So there is no value addition in terms of customer. In terms of customer, the price is a standard, but a very high value addition for the customer. That means you are offering a normal coffee in a silver tumbler or a gold tumbler, and they are saying low prices. There were tremendous opportunities of scaling down the material content. But what these guys were deliberately doing is they are over designing the product. So here, you don't speak a cost accounting language, get into a cost engineering mode, connect the material cost with the metallurgy, with the choice of the materials, with the sourcing, and prove it to them that looking at from a value perspective for the customer value angle, you are incurring more than what the customer wants. Why the hell you are spending so much and you are complaining customer is not giving you a price? So don't do that. Understand what customer wants and scale down your cost structure. It strikes them like a thunderbolt. So this is how, according to me, you speak more of what value those guys are creating for the customer, for which they are giving a price and a material cost. That is good enough for articulating a TCM in a company which is in a low priced market but doesn't appreciate the goodness of a value based cost accounting.
It's very true. One more question that during my practical experience I have faced is, when we do assignments relating to refinery industry, refinery, petroleum refinery. The main problem that we face is that, of course, the material cost is very high, and then the other expenses, overheads are very minuscule. Sometimes the material cost is like 90% or 95%. So they tend to tell that there is hardly any leeway for cutting cost or trying to analyze it. Just want to know your views that how we can, as a TCM concept, we can introduce it in the refinery industry. If
These companies are not looking at the way in which I am telling, because refineries, the end product is a commodity. At the end, finally, the value addition would take place only when they convert the basic distillation into a value added products. So the companies which you are talking or having in your mind may not be indulging in the creation of the value added products, but the basic process they will be talking. So here, the logic, what I said, look at the value addition to the customer in the marketplace, and what is your cost structure would not work. So what would work in this sort of companies is normally what they are already doing in terms of waste elimination. That is, value being constant, you can't increase the value ladder. Value will be constant. That is all. I am sending a crude oil, I am transmitting a crude oil, I am refining a crude oil, and a distilled oil is being sent further. When I am only doing at that particular level, then what is important is, other than the capacity cost, which is more related to depreciation and maintenance, the non-capacity cost, where there are auxiliaries and fixtures and other transmitting facilities which guzzle a huge conversion cost, whether they have optimized that through the engineering approach, that is the only way where you can look at.
like utilities.
A power consumption, it can be a variable drive in pumping, or in terms of a typical a corrosive wall which has to be utilized. Are they looking at a long-term wall which has got a corrosive resistance, but initially the spend may be high, but it will withstand over 15 years? Or you look at an initial spend which will have to be replaced in once in 2 or 3 years, and the overall outlay is very, very high. So how they have applied their mind in cost optimization at an operational level, either in a linear cost like power, or in a non-linear cost, where these sort of examples like a replacement valve, these are the areas where one can apply the mind.
Thank you. So some of the members have posted questions on the chat box. I would be asking you those questions. Sir, have you used the CII TCM maturity model in a startup and a small business?
No, no, no.
If yes, outline how it differs from the
You should,
large and mature.
answer is you should not apply this in a startup. Startup requires a very, very basic culture of innovation. It comes from the strategy. For a startup, innovation is the root, and for innovating, it should not bound that innovation spark by a cost structuring. So you should allow the initial build up of that innovation. You should allow that startup to scale up, and somewhere when they become unicorn, just before that you should caution them, and only at that stage the TCM maturity model should come for them, and definitely not at a startup stage.
Okay. Then another question is, sir, to what extent TCM is helpful in a SaaS-based software product industry, where payroll, R&D, software subscription, marketing, sales cost are the key expenses? Do we have any TCM tool for this environment?
SaaS is a more of a dashboard. So how do you configure the strategy and build it into a, what all I spoke is how to interpret a strategy and build it into a SaaS as a dashboard will help you if you have interpreted and implemented a strategy by making compartmentalizing into building blocks. If you configure the strategy into a SaaS and populate that with cost measurement, it will help you. But that is 50% of the story. The other 50% is SaaS doesn't capture value. So you bring in the value measurement through your other business analytics or other mechanism, align the value with the cost measurement in SaaS, then you really hit the bullet. That is how, again and again, I am seeing not only with my clients but also in such seminars, the value part is not sinking in the minds what I'm saying. Again and again, they speak of cost and not in the value angle. How to capture value if any CMA is going to specialize in how to capture the value in the marketplace. Again, I am telling you, value here doesn't mean sales minus variable cost. Value coming from the marketplace, customer value, and other stakeholders' value. If any CMA is going to specialize how to transaction level, how to capture and report on value, if I do that, that CMA will be on the top of the world in another 5 to 10 years. Because the next coming corporate reporting called integrated reporting, where values reporting board has been created, like IFRS, something has been created for VRS, value reporting standards. So if someone captures that insights very carefully, what will happen is CMAs in employment and CMAs in practice understanding the value game will hit the roost. They will be the most demanded professionals in the days to come. We ignore that and keep on talking about cost.
So there were actually two parts to this question. One was, do we have any TCM tool for this environment? Other was, to what extent TCM is helpful in SaaS-based software product industry, where payroll, R&D, and software subscription, marketing, sales cost are key expenses.
Yeah, they create value. He's answering looking at it from the cost angle. Sales, R&D, marketing, they in turn create value, isn't it? So how to align that marketing expenses? If I start capturing the marketing expenses, for example, it is a B2B marketing or a B2C marketing. There will be customer segments or there will be channel segments if it is B2B. So those channel segments or the customer segments, how the value creation takes place in those channels, and that value creation comes from the product and the marketing department. That alignment has to come along with this marketing cost. Same thing for the HR industry also. Same thing for R&D also. So if the value creation is brought along with the cost of these departments, then you really hit the bullseye. This is a very high level concept statement I have made. To explain how to do it, we need to have a longer sitting.
Yes. So one of the members has asked a question. Despite top management buyout and strong HR processes, target costing hits hurdle of resistance and a lot of time is lost in alignment. What is your experience and advice on this?
The is a very good point. Question has been asked. Normally, the resistance comes where the innovation is required. In many of my examples, where the low hanging fruits are there. Like for example, I have to meet a target cost of one particular component, and it has to drop down by 10%. So the easiest way is I change a source. I supply, instead of buying from source A, if I buy from source B, the cost comes down by 3%. Or if I, instead of buying in big lots, I buy in small lots, and or if I, instead of small lots and buy big lots and store, the cost come down. ये सब चीजें are the easy ways of target costing. But where you get into the tough nut part, how much it adds value, whether that product adds value to the customer. And here, because of a easy way out, you buy this component from China. It can be an electronic component. You buy this drive, or you buy this capacitor and put it as a part of the electronics. It's the easy way. But if you look at the customer angle, he would not pay that high price for the electronic. That target costing doing is tough. So the resistance comes when you are pushed for action. That situation takes a long time because of the innovation. Atmanirbhar Bharat requires that. And that is the reason why, if target costing is mastered, it will play a phenomenal role both in Atmanirbhar Bharat as well as in this geopolitical shift, capturing the lost Chinese market. For you to capture, you require innovation based target costing. And when it comes to innovation, you get resistance.
Uh, I think this is a very important point. Of course, what I'll be saying through my personal experience, I've seen is that when I'm charging the client, the premium we get is only when we give some value to the clients. So if we are not giving them any value, probably they will always get into the competitive mode and cutting cost mode. So of course, if we think it from each and every business perspective, then end of the day, if the products and services are giving value to the customers, then we'll be able to translate the cost of it in a better manner. So a very brilliant question, which I feel is being asked from one of our members. Sir, can you share how to break down a product price into its value components? Value from the buyer's perspective would be different from each class of customers, while the price remains the same.
This is the essence of target costing, which is he asking. I'm thoroughly exhausted today. It take some time, at least half an hour, even to tell broadly how should be done. It's a good question, but that is the essence of target costing. That is the essence of target costing.
And, so I think the questions are over, and I'm very thankful to you.
But I will give one quick example for this guy to be happy. Recently, one of the company, it is making some product. I don't want to. This is a 10 days back old story. So this company is getting a huge RFQ for supplies in Europe because they don't want to go to China. So 50% market share they want to give to India and looking for sources. So when it comes to prices, they are trying to match the Chinese prices. Of course, they will give some extra leeway for India. But only thing is, when you quote for this particular company, this particular buyer from Europe, they are saying we need to work on the situation where the product which you are giving should work for us in minus 20 degrees centigrade, because that is the European condition, or minus 40 degree centigrade. So your product is only on this particular scale. It comes only up to that. So now this company is now coming up with the innovation and passing that test, and they are saying we are happy, but the price is not sufficient, and they are making losses. But In a target costing, they would discover that this particular European buyer wants you to pass the test at X degree minus X degree centigrade, whereas you have made the product so rich that you are passing the test with 1.5x level margin. So what happens in the appetite for getting this European order, you have over designed either the metallurgy or the method. Either the material cost is over designed, or the methoding cost is over designed, or the manufacturing cost is over designed. But the price remains the same. So, this over designing in terms of what features, it is broken up into, let us say, 5 or 10 features. So those 5 or 10 features and the related material and the manufacturing process, if that logic is not constructed, you will not know where I am overdoing internally in my organization. This is done by a target costing approach. So you can restructure your product design, process design, and manufacturing design, and still become competitive while meeting the customer targets. So it comes through a very rigorous practice of the target costing backed by a process of innovation. Okay, thank you.
So, I would like to hand over the mic to our co-host, Manoj Kumar Anand sir. So,
Thank you very much, Sankalp ji. I think Raman ji has made a wonderful presentation. My other friends, Ravi Sani is there, and so many young people are there. You see, this is what we have been advocating, that in this era of identity crisis, what most of our members are telling, these are the backbone areas which we should practice and speak and debate about more, rather than constantly complaining. I will say that we are not being given. I mean, he has very elaborately presented that till now, our own accounting professionals or our own colleagues are unable to understand that what is the difference between the value creation through the TCM, and we just keep on comparing ourselves with the other areas of financial and other accounting areas, basically. Thank you very much, Ramanji, for, as usually, a very brilliant presentation with a lot of examples and with a lot of clear thoughts into your own a mind, which you have actually implemented over a period of at least 3 decades, which I know you, basically. Thank you very much, Sankalp, also to organize this wonderful program for the benefit of our members. I wish we should have more time to have more interaction with Ramanji, but seeing his very long day scheduling, I think maybe some other time we will request him to be more on question answers, basically, so that our most members who are in industry or who are practicing can then benefit through his extremely large experience. And thank you very much once again.
thank you, sir. Now we will be closing the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good program.
Thank you.
आफ्टर मीटिंग आ रहा है। संकल्प वाधवा गया ना, कितने बंदे रह गए? अरे आवाज